In here, dear.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
May I join you?
Yes, please. I even poured you a cup of tea.
Fantastic. Well, what are you doing?
Well, I was just thinking, maybe we should read to the kids for Corona story time.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, so I thought maybe we'd start with the Bavarian Airship Regatta out of the compendium.
Okay.
So, but it seems to me that the first chapter is yours.
Okay, well, I guess we should do this in character.
Okay.
You're going to be?
I will be Dr. Sparky McTrowell, airship pilot and flight surgeon for Western and Transatlantic Airship Lines, and you will be?
I'll be Chief Inspector Erasmus Drake of Scotland Yard.
Excellent. Would you like some milk with your tea, dear?
I would love some. Oh, this is great. Thank you.
All right, there you go.
And I see the first chapter is mine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. How civilized. Well, this chapter is named A Serious Knock. You like? Scotland Yard's Chief Inspector Erasmus Drake answered uncharacteristically with his mouth full. I like. The new French bakery had opened near Trafalgar Square, about midpoint in Erasmus's morning walk from his apartment above Ye Old Cheshire Cheese to 4 Whitehall Place. You know where Scotland Yard is.
Yes, I do.
Erasmus was trying one of their freshly baked croissants after the proprietor, Jacques, had dunked one end into the open jar of strawberry jam. Erasmus had only stopped by to see the new store and possibly get something reasonably small to eat during his commute. Instead, Jacques had started him off by tasting the pain au chocolat, followed by a cream puff, and then half an almond horn.
Sounds like quite the breakfast.
Erasmus liked them all, but he politely informed Jacques that they were a bit too sweet for his English palate. The croissant was the baker's response, despite the added jam. Erasmus held up 2 fingers and redundantly requested "do," verbally. Jacques smiled. No French needed. My English is good, Chief Inspector Drake. Oh, you recognize me? Erasmus asked, a bit surprised. But of course. You are in the papers twice this week. A very good illustration. Jacques pressed a bag with the croissants inside into Erasmus's hands. New store! Samples of our goods for you. Enjoy them, s'il vous plaît. Erasmus's initial response was to force some payment on him, but Jacques looked so happy to have him there. A mother and her child had been peeking in the window and finally got up the courage to enter the newly opened shop. The bell over the door gave a cheerful ring as they entered. Erasmus finished thanking Jacques, turned, and gave the young mother a nod, combined with bringing his bowler halfway up his head and tipping it from there. He eased the bowler back into its rightful place on his head as he exited the bakery. Tock, tock, tock. Erasmus's cane made a distinctive sound on the sidewalk. Erasmus took in the scene of the early morning London, while he mentally listed the minutiae he needed to address at work. Mondays always had the feeling of new beginnings and new challenges, particularly at the yard. Erasmus entered the rear door on Great Scotland Yard. The office had an atypically calm atmosphere. He settled into his office chair, pulled out his latest notes to see if there were any additional details that he had forgotten to include, filled his pen with ink, and started the process of verification. Erasmus's door opened just far enough to allow Superintendent Bartholomew Horner to just jut his head through. Minute of your time? Erasmus motioned him in. Good morning, Superintendent. How can I assist you? Bartholomew strode in with a rolled-up broadsheet in his hand. He placed it on Erasmus's desk and unfurled it, anchoring it to the desk at the top and bottom with his burly hands. Seen these around? Bartholomew asked. Yes, I have, but I haven't had the time this week to read it in detail. I heard about the airship regatta, but I hadn't noticed the particulars. This was not true. Dr. Sparky McTrowell mentioned the regatta, and Erasmus had looked over the broadsheets posted around London many times over the intervening weekend. I need to place a member of Scotland Yard on the Burke and Hare. The airship is assuming the role of Britain's international participant in the regatta. Due to the nature of the voyage, Her Majesty requested that we provide guardianship of the crew and its passengers. Normally, I would ask for volunteers, but I thought you might want a bit of a breather from last week's excitement. Didn't you get to meet this doctor who's piloting the craft? What is he like? Erasmus knew he was being played. Bartholomew read over the investigation notes with enthusiasm, and he had access to Drake's notes all weekend. Erasmus knew that Bartholomew was aware that Dr. McTrowell was a woman. Erasmus also knew that this was a bit of a test to see if he would bite at the chance to join the voyage. But all of this didn't really matter, now did it? Getting a chance to be on that airship would just fulfill the aspiration that he had toyed with all weekend. Interesting offer, I do say. I see by the date on the poster that it sails today. I would have to get a number of personal and occupational things in order. Do you have word on when it launches? Erasmus, what about the doctor? Oh, yes, Dr. McTrowell turns out to be a woman. Hails from the Americas, known for a number of things, including inventing. She was in the process of displaying a contraption at the great exhibit when she was attacked. Upstanding character she is. That said, do we know the launch time? Can I still board? There will be a dinner on the Burke and Hare itself tonight, 7 o'clock, just after lunch. Can I count on you to shoulder this? You can. I will put my things in order straight away, Erasmus replied, employing his best straight face. One more thing, Bartholomew added. I want you to carry arms. I know that you have a revolver. Take it. I also want you to have a sword from our armory. Some of it is for show, I know, and you can always count on a sword to let others know that you are in charge. It took an entire hour for Erasmus to get out of Scotland Yard. He kept the broadsheet, procured a saber from the armory, and arranged to have Sergeant Tate Parsival take over command of his cases for the duration of his absence. The sergeant had his flaws, but he was a good administrator. Upon leaving, Erasmus turned the corner to head back to his apartment when he saw Abigail Schopenhauer in the shadows. She was wrapped as usual in a shawl that covered her shoulders and head, leaving her grandmothery face peeking out. She was looking in Erasmus's direction with her cataract-filled eyes and smiling to the extent that it made her entire face rounder than usual. As Erasmus approached, she started in with, I was right, wasn't I? Eh? The artist's den. That's where you had to look. Her voice was cheerful but raspy, and with a bit of kindness coming through. You were spot on, my dear, spot on. As he got close, she took his arm. Her smile didn't lessen a bit. She queried, Anything new for me? Word at the yard is that the cold weather from the north means less wheat coming into the mills. Expect the price of bread to go up. Thank you, thank you. You are off to travel or formal ball. Oh, don't look at me like that. You don't usually have a sword at your side. You're off to play bodyguard, I bet. Erasmus realized that she was better at detective work than some of his own officers. He replied, Why, yes. I have been called to duty, of a sort. I will not be around for a few weeks. Abigail's smile lessened. She didn't like the idea of Erasmus playing hero somewhere. Good way to end up as a statue in a London park. No use being gloomy, she thought. Well, safe travels then. Normally Abigail would have some dire warning that she passed along. Odd that she didn't this time. The truth was she was very concerned about the growing number of cholera victims in the city, and that something needed to be done. No one knew what was causing the sickness, and since it struck the poor the most, it didn't get much notice as it should. No one knew what was causing the sickness, and since it struck the poor the most, it didn't get as much notice as it should. As usual, they parted, and Erasmus made good speed back to his apartment. Within 2 hours he had his trunk packed, and informed James Crocker, the proprietor of Ye Old Cheshire Cheese, that he would be away for the duration of the regatta. James agreed to let Erasmus's laundry service know about his absence and forwarded his mail to him. Erasmus scribbled a few quick missives to friends, including William, about his journey, and provided them to James for posting. Erasmus hired a carriage to transport himself and his trunk to the London airship port. The short ride was uneventful for the most part, but Erasmus had time to think about the fact that it had been a long time since he had been outside London. It had played a safe haven for him, and the idea of leaving was one of exiting a protective bubble, but that stirred a memory from long ago past. He shook it off and prepared himself to look forward to the things to come. Okay.
Would you like a sip of tea, my dear?
I would. Okay. At the airship port, Erasmus procured his ticket, with a few simple words describing Scotland Yard's request for him to join the crew. He released his trunk to the porters for storage in his cabin on the Burke and Hare and lingered a bit in the station, looking at the posted broadsheets and the pamphlets for visiting foreign lands. He then strode across the flight yard to tower number 3 that tethered the airship and climbed the stairs. He stopped at the top and took a minute to look back at London. It was a grand view from that height, and this was the city where he had made his mark. The sun was just setting, an orange glow adding a little extra warmth to the city of gray. Erasmus took an extra look at his ticket, which directed him to cabin number 7. Once inside the airship's gondola, it was clear that the craft was made for speed more than comfort. The passageways were compact, with handholds for when the airship was used in an athletic fashion. The decor was of oiled teak, brass fixtures, and nautical rope. There were a few other people on board that Erasmus saw on his way to his cabin. Most were dressed in the attire of the crew, making pre-launch examinations of all the various mechanical systems on board. About halfway down the main central corridor, Erasmus found his cabin door, the knob of which was an exaggerated oval for easy turning, even if one's hands were slick with oil. He entered and found a cozy room on the port side, his trunk secured to the wall, away from the bed, with a long leather belt. On the bed was an invitation for the evening's meal. It indicated that the dinner would be formal. Erasmus opened his trunk to remove his formal dinner waistcoat and jacket. A serious knock on the door interrupted his progress. I need a sip of tea.
Oh, an excellent idea, Chief Inspector. Thirsty work, yes?
Opening the door, Erasmus was met by a well-dressed man in a formal, black, British military uniform. He stood with an air that suggested he was trying to look informal, but it still looked like he was at attention. His cap was trapped firmly between his hand and elbow, and he was looking straight at Erasmus, waiting for him to start the conversation. So Erasmus did. Good evening. I am Chief Inspector Erasmus Drake of Scotland Yard. How may I be of service? Pardon my bluntness, are you alone? Why, yes. Would you like to talk in my cabin? Erasmus offered, with a small wave of his hand. Thank you, yes. The military man took 2 steps forward, turned quickly, shut and bolted the door, and then turned back as quickly. Snapping a salute, the man rattled off, Sergeant J.B. Fox of Her Majesty's Aerial Marines. I must inform you that your mission here is more extensive than you have been told.
Dun dun dun.
My instructions were to provide guardianship of the crew and passengers. I volunteered to take on this responsibility. Are you sure you have the right man? Chief Inspector, Her Majesty has reason to believe that marauders using fast airships as attack vehicles have a home base somewhere near Vaduz, one of the waypoints in the regatta. A request was made for support from Her Majesty's Aerial Marines, as well as support from Scotland Yard to investigate the validity of this intelligence, locate the Marauders' base, if possible, and protect the crew and passengers of the Burke and Hare. Her Majesty has relayed to her aerial marines that cooperation between the nations of Europe is critical at this point in time, and any intelligence that we can gather will be used in securing international relationships. I was requested by name by my superiors for this mission. You were also requested by name by Superintendent Horner. We were told that you would not know the full extent of your mission upon arrival, and that you may have even been duped into believing you volunteered for the mission. Again, I assure you, you were chosen. Scotland Yard gave your name to us last week for the mission. My first responsibility was to brief you on this. This was more than Erasmus had expected. But what was initially a concern that he was leaving London to go gallivanting around was now a real opportunity to help the British Empire. So, full steam ahead, he thought. He bent over, grabbed his best ascot out of the trunk, held it up for mock inspection, and said, "You keep saying marauders, but I keep hearing pirates. I am in. I am in. Let us get to this formal dinner and get the hunt underway."
Well, thank you for that, my dear. I hope the kids really enjoyed that, and we hope that you're staying safe and healthy out there.
Stay tuned for another chapter of Drake McTrowell's Adventures of the Bavarian Airship Regatta.